So last week we had John Krasinski and Phoebe Waller-Bridge on talking about the new movie that John has written and directed and stars in. It is now out, and as we established, and as Marcus just repeated, this is not a remake of the Lindsay Anderson, because that would have been a very strange marriage of two ideas.
I mean, it should be said that the Lindsay Anderson is if ... and this is IF, both capitalised, okay? So if you haven't listened to the John Krasinski, Phoebe Waller-Bridge interview already, go back and listen to it because it sets the scene better than I could. So this is live-action animation hybrid. Katie Fleming is B, a young girl who lost her mother and whose father, played by John Krasinski, who also directs, writes, produces and all the rest of it, is now having heart surgery. So she's very anxious. She goes to stay with her grandmother, played by Fiona Shaw, and when she's in her grandmother's apartment, she meets a neighbour, played by Ryan Reynolds, Calvin, and they discover that they both have the ability to see other people's ifs, imaginary friends. So that's what the if stands for. Here's a clip.
So are there more of you?
Say no.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, lots more. I mean, almost every kid has one. Had one.
Had what?
A friend.
An imaginary friend?
If. We say if.
Get it? Imaginary? Friend? But also like, what if? Like, anything's possible.
Ooh, ouch.
The voices, I mean, it's obviously because John Krasinski is well connected. So Steve Carell, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who was the guest last week, Lou Gossett Jr., Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Jon Stewart, Uncle Tom Cobley and all. I mean, it is an absolutely stellar cast list involved with the voices, all the famous friends, which is fine. Although I think there is always a problem with that, is that it can start to feel a little smug. Here's my I am slightly iffy about if, and here's why. I think the central conceit is that these ifs, these imaginary friends, have been abandoned. They've been forgotten by the children that imagined them in the first place. So now they're living these kind of, lives like the Toy Story toys that have been abandoned and forgotten by Andy or whoever it is. And what happens is that our young heroine and Calvin are teaming up in order to find them new children, or perhaps, reconnect them with their now adult former children, and so make everything happy again. And the conceit doesn't quite work. And the reason I think it doesn't quite work is partly because there is a bit of Toy Story in there, and Toy Story did that better. Partly because there's a bit of Inside Out in there, and Inside Out did it better. And partly because the film is about the magic of storytelling. It's about, what do we do when we tell stories to ourselves, to other people? And I think, weirdly enough, the magic of storytelling is what's missing from If. Now, I don't mean that doesn't mean it doesn't have charming moments. I mean, it is manipulative. I think the word that I think you and I were talking about it's exploitative in as much as it wants you to react. It wants you to cry. And I have to confess that about 2/3 the way through, I gave up and went, okay, fine. And I did. And there was a couple of moments when I welled up, and there was a couple of moments when, because I'm a softie and I like crying in the cinema, it did move me. But I do think it's structurally unsound. I don't think it's a classic. I think it's fine. I think it's overburdened by celebrity a little bit. And I wanted it to be more magical than it was. Tell me, because you saw this before me. Do you like it more than I? I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I thought it was lacking in magic. What do you think?
Well, I was aware all the way through, as I mentioned in the interview, that Gabby Roslin, who was watching it for Radio 2, was weeping throughout the whole film. So when you say it has an emotional impact, I was very much aware that that's absolutely right. And that's why I think it's sort of Toy Story 3 rather than Toy Story, because it felt like a children's tale for grown-ups. It'll be the grown-ups who are moved by this because it's about lost childhood.
Yeah.
So I thought it was, given how much I loved The Quiet Place, which was the last stuff John Krasinski created, I was slightly disappointed because I did feel as though it was exploitative, and it was a bit like, oh, you're not crying. Well, okay, here's a scene. This is going to make you cry.
Yeah.
So there was an element of that. So I thought it was charming. I think it will have a power and a heft which is for me represented. I mean, you teared up. Gabby, poor thing, was really, really upset. And I think John Krasinski said she teared up 3 times during the interview. So just bringing up the subject of lost childhood, I think, will be powerful. Therefore, I think the film will be powerful. But maybe I was just slightly disappointed because it wasn't 5 out of 5.
It's not. Well, it's not Inside Out, and it's not Toy Story, and it's not Toy Story 3. It is in that ballpark, but it's not on the same level as those. And I agree. I mean, I love John Krasinski. He seems to be an all-round decent, good, inventive, and he's been involved in some films that I really love. And I mean, that voice cast, Simon, is absolutely insane. I mean, it would be shorter to write a list of who wasn't involved in it. There is the Keith joke, which I thought was going to become annoying, has got a very good payoff. So
but you do have to wait to the very end of the film.
But there are good things in it, and I'll be interested next week to see if we get mail from people about what they thought about. I think I agree with you. It's not 5 out of 5. And you kind of want it to be, and it isn't.
Again, when I was just also struck when I came out of the screening, people were discussing whether they had imaginary friends, and someone did, and 3 of us didn't. And then I said, but when I put a certain jumper on, I was Peter from Germany. And everyone just thought that was just really weird. So that was all very, very strange. So, maybe, if it affects people like that, and if grown-ups have conversations like that, maybe it'll find an audience which is, which will make it a big box office hit.
Yeah, I didn't have imaginary friends. If I imagined a friend, they'd go off with somebody else.
It's a very revealing statement. You should have a word with your therapist, I think, about that.
Weirdly enough, that's what I'm doing this afternoon.
All right. But imagine being ditched by your imaginary friend.
Yeah.
That speaks. What is that? Okay. You must tell us ask her that specific question. And, but as far as I can make out, because I did some work before obviously I did some work before interviewing John and Phoebe last week, that it's that psychiatry, they all say this is a good thing. Have an imaginary friend is a good thing. It's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And
of course.
So therefore, but none of them address the issue of your imaginary friend going off with somebody else. So
my imaginary friend went off with Peter from Germany,
issue.
as far as I can tell. So there we go.
Oh, right. Okay.